Alright guys, welcome to part 2 of the Stronger Than Fear squad pack review for Star Wars Shatterpoint. The first part was Kanan Jarrus, and this part is Ezra Bridger and Zeb Orrelios. Ezra being the secondary and Zeb being the support. So, let's jump into it. Starting off with Ezra, he's the secondary with a 4-point cost and 0 force. He's got 8 stamina, 2 durability, Force User, Padawan, Rebel Alliance, Scoundrel, and Spectre tags. So off the bat, 8 generally feels a little bit low for me in a secondary. I like to see them hitting that 9 point, but he has access to a ton of heals through himself and his squad, and has access to a bunch of very good defensive abilities. So overall, I think that 8 is going to feel fine on the table, as long as he's not rushing headlong into a battle with Grievous or Vader. As for his tags, they're all really good. Force User is solid. Padawan is solid. I'm sure there is a way to get him into a list with Plo if you use 2 squads to do it, but I'm not sure exactly how good it would be, but you can do it. Rebel Alliance, solid. Luke, Leia, Han, and the rest of this team are all going to have those, so super flexible. It's the generic faction keyword for the Rebels. It's got Scoundrel, so he could go with Mando, Hondo, Bad Batch if you wanted to. All potentially good options, but I'll have to test them out myself. And then, just like Kanan and the rest of this squad, Spectre is the big tag for them. That is what gives them access to a lot of the best abilities that all of these units have on them. So overall, really good tag suite, and I think he has the option to be very flexible and helpful in a lot of different lists, not just Rebel or Spectre lists. So, moving on to his abilities. The first one is an active. It is Force Jump, costs 1 Force. We've seen this pretty often. It's a good ability. A Force for a jump is pretty excellent. It can sort of act as a dash early on if you need it, but I don't think you need to use it every single time he's going. It's more of like a, you need to be somewhere right now kind of thing. You can use it. His second ability is an active ability called Unreliable Informant, also costs 1 Force. Choose an enemy supporting character within range 3 and roll a defense die. On an expertise result, the chosen character dashes. You resolve this move. On a block or failure result, the chosen character gains pin. So this ability is super cool. It's thematic, and it's actually quite good. Um, it's basically a random push. It's not exactly a push, but it's kind of is, because you, being Ezra's controlling character, gets to resolve the dash on the enemy supporting unit, so you get to move them where you want to put them, which is really powerful. And then still, if you roll a block or a fail, you get the pin, which is still quite good, but obviously not as good. You're hoping to roll that expertise. So it's kind of like a weaker random force push for 1 force instead of 2, which I think is cool. It's a reasonable trade-off, and I think it's hilariously thematic. So I could see myself using this ability pretty frequently, but definitely not every time he's going. His third ability is a reactive called Helpful Hand. When an allied force user primary character ends a move action within range 2, this unit may use this ability. One character in this unit may jump. So it sort of allows him to play leapfrog with force user primaries. The big part here is that it says force user primary, so that's Kanan, that's Luke, that's Grand Inquisitor, that's, I think Vader has force user. Maul, Maul and Ezra work together in the show. So you have a lot of options for this. It means any squad that you're putting him in, if you have a force user, which you should because of this ability, you're going to be able to move a ton with Ezra. He can get a jump from that, which is out of his own activation as well, and a jump from force jump, and then a bunch of other stuff from abilities. So very good. If you have no other triggers for a move like that, then this is excellent, and I can see no real reason why not to use it. Once it costs 1 force, if he's wounded, you probably can still use it. It's probably still very helpful in certain situations, but it's definitely not as mandatory. Moving on to his fourth ability. It is an innate called Thanks for Doing the Heavy Lifting. When determining control of an active objective that a character in this unit is contesting, if there is a tie, this unit's controlling player takes control of the objective. So it's just Inquisitorial Mandate. He wins ties. Is really good. The big thing is that this is on a secondary character instead of a supporting character. So let's do some rough math here. A basic normal squad has 4 bodies. That's 1 primary, 1 secondary, and then 2 bodies on the supporting unit. So that's 4. This squad with Kanan, Ezra, and Zeb has 3 bodies, but Ezra wins ties. So it's really like 3.5 bodies. They don't win against 4, but they win against 3. So it's sort of 3.5. But if you don't take Zeb and you put a 2-bodied secondary unit in supporting unit in this squad, that squad then has 4.5 bodies. So you're getting more contesting power than a normal squad has, which is potentially very powerful and could win entire games just off of that. So that's something to consider when building squads with him. And he's going to be quite powerful with other stuff that wins ties. It means you're going to be winning ties left and right. You take Fifth Brother, you take any of the other Inquisitors, you just throw them all together and win all ties. It's very good ability. It's innate, so obviously always active. It means that he's also capable of sort of pushing further back and threatening back points if you need him to, because generally speaking, people will only leave 1, maybe 2 support characters in the back like that, and he will win ties on objectives back there. So, very good ability. It's probably his defining ability, but maybe it could be his 5th one, which is an innate called This Helmet is Property of Ezra Bridger. When a character in this unit wounds an enemy supporting unit with an attack, after the effect is resolved, gain an additional momentum token. So, generally speaking, supporting units are the ones that you want to attack first. They're the easiest to wound, they're the easiest to get off of the board, and when you wound a supporting unit, you are turning off 2 scoring bodies instead of just 1. So, what he is doing is taking what is already the best strategy and making it better for himself. So even if he didn't have this ability, he should probably still be attacking supporting units. But now that he has this ability, he should definitely be attacking supporting units. Another big thing about this is that it doesn't specify an attack action. So if he gets an out of activation attack from somewhere else, and he wounds the supporting unit, then this still happens. You gain an additional momentum. So you're just gaining 2 momentum, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it really can make a huge difference in any struggle and over an entire course of a game, because it doesn't happen just once. This is happening every time Ezra is wounding a supporting unit. So it could happen a ton, potentially up to 4 or 5 times in a game. So moving on to his stance card. It's called Fast Learner. Starts off with 6 attack dice at range 4, 7 in melee, and 5 defense dice for both. That's a pretty solid base. I like, just like Kanan, that he has the option to use his gun or his saber. I do like, personally, that he hits better rather than shooting better. I feel like it's a little bit more thematic. And 5 defense dice for both is a solid base. I think he's going to feel decently defensive. His ranged attack expertise is pretty good. He gets 2 strikes at 1, a crit and a strike at 2 to 3, and 2 crits and a shove at 4 or more. So not a crit at every level, but if you're rolling more than 1, which is generally the case, then you're going to be getting at least 1 crit. So not bad. 2 strikes at 1 is also pretty good because you get a 2 to 1 ratio of expertise to results. So overall, I think this attack expertise is solid. A shove that's not on the combat tree means it's immune to steadfast, so potentially always going to be shoving if you're rolling that 4 or more. So I think it's quite good, and he should feel reasonably consistent while shooting. His melee expertise is also fairly good. This time he is getting a crit at every level, with also an additional damage at every level, and then at 3 he's getting a strike, and at 4 he's getting a second crit and a jump. So, a 1-to-1 ratio or better until 5 expertise, excellent. A crit at every level, excellent. And a jump at 4 or more, so extra mobility, excellent. He has all 3 checkboxes that I like to look for, and the extra damage is obviously not bad, but generally speaking, I like to have a strike instead of extra damage. However, with all those crits, I think it's fine. He's also going to feel fairly consistent in melee, and his defensive expertise is also solid. Once again, a 1-to-1 ratio of expertise to results, and a block at every level, and extra mobility, and crit mitigation. He has everything. The only thing that might be missing that some people would look for is a heal, but I think dashes, crit mitigation, and blocks at every level is a fair trade for no heals. 1 block at 1, 2 blocks and a dash at 2 to 3, and 2 blocks, a crit to a strike, and a dash at 4 or more. So, very solid. He's going to be kind of difficult to wound, I think, but obviously that could be different once we get him on the table. But overall, for a secondary, I think all of these expertise are very good. But let's see how they pair with his combat tree. His combat tree is also pretty good. It's topping out at 7 damage, potentially. The big things are, again, a shove on 1. Very good, very powerful. He can do 3 different conditions. He can get up to 2 shoves. He can reposition and or jump. And he has access to 3 heals. So overall, it's really flexible. I like that there are so many different trees and options that you can take. And I like that you can get to his last box on 4 or 5 successes. So that jump should be relatively common, and that reposition and 3 heals should be very common. Overall, I think it's a pretty good attack tree. 7 damage for Ezra feels good, and shove on 1, shove on 3 feel very nice. So overall, I think Ezra is going to be very good. I think he is probably the unit that we've seen from the Ghost Crew that is going to fit in the most other lists. Specifically, I have seen a lot of people talking about putting him with Grand Inquisitor and in Inquisitor lists. I've seen people talking about taking him with Maul, taking him with Luke, and I think if you put him in a second squad, taking him with Plo is probably not even a bad idea either, because he has that Padawan keyword. So overall, super flexible, a very good bunch of abilities, and a really solid stance card. I am super excited to get him on the board and see how he feels once we're playing games with him. So moving on to Zeb. Zeb is the supporting unit, 4 cost, 0 force, 9 stamina, 3 durability, Rebel Alliance, Spectre, and Warrior keywords. So 9 stamina is obviously good. Once again, a lot of heals, a lot of defensive abilities. So 9 feels pretty solid. 3 durability also feels very solid, but he has an ability that sort of messes with that. So I think they had to give him 3 for that ability to work at all, because if he only had 2, nobody would ever use it. Rebel Alliance, Spectre, Warrior, he's missing Scoundrel. I wish he had Scoundrel personally, but Rebel Alliance and Warrior pair well because of Ewoks and Leia. So if you want him to be a fake Ewok Warrior, you can throw him in a list with Leia, and they'll pair pretty well. The Spectre keyword, once again, the most powerful tag that they have, gives him access to the most abilities. So let's look at his abilities. The first is an active called This Is Gonna Hurt Pal for 1 force. Choose an allied Rebel Alliance character in line of sight. 1 character in this unit may dash toward the chosen character. If the chosen character is a Spectre, 1 character in this unit may instead advance toward the chosen character. After the move is resolved, if 1 or more characters in this unit are engaged, this unit immediately makes a focus action. So Zeb gets to move towards an ally who is ideally engaged, hoping to engage himself, so he gets that free focus. This is solid. I don't think you need to use it every time. If you can use it on a Spectre, which is probably almost always, you get that advance, which means he can advance up to 2 times, up to 3 times if you look at his combat tree in an activation, which is fairly solid, pretty mobile. The stipulation of needing to end engaged to get the focus is fairly easy to deal with, but sometimes you're just not going to be able to reach engagement. And if you're not going to be able to reach engagement, then I'm not sure it's worth using this ability. Second ability, Lisan Honor Guard. When this unit becomes wounded, after the effect is resolved, this unit may use this ability. This unit gains 2 injured tokens. Then it removes 1 wounded token, all damage, and 1 condition from itself. So, this is his most controversial ability so far. People are still trying to figure out when or how or why you would ever use this, because basically you are just giving yourself 1 additional injured token to not be wounded anymore. So that means he can still contest points, but you're getting him significantly closer to being removed from the table. I personally think that this ability is actually pretty good. Being able to guarantee that he will not stop contesting a point means that your opponent can no longer rely on wounding him to flip a point to their favor. They would have to either displace or win the point by having more bodies on it. I think that this ability is probably a late game, maybe even mid game ability. I don't see myself wanting to use it very frequently in the first struggle, but you probably can, because if you do, you gain that 2 injured tokens, and then he sort of just feels like a regular supporting character with 2 durability. So overall, I think once we get him on the table, we'll see that this ability can maybe be very good in certain situations, but it's definitely not something that you're going to want to use every single time that he becomes wounded. Okay, moving on to his third ability. It's a reactive called It's Just Something About the Feel of Their Helmets on My Fists. Costs 1 force. After a character in this unit makes an attack as part of a combat action, this unit may use this ability. 1 character in this unit may make a 5 dice attack targeting a character in the same enemy unit. So it's just very similar to IG, to Han, who can just shoot twice, attack twice. But the big thing here is that his 5 dice attack has to target the same enemy unit. So he is a supporting unit. Supporting units normally have 2 bodies, which, when they make a combat action, can attack 2 different units, the same unit. They can mix and match however they want. So when you compare that to him, he is a single body, not winning ties, supporting unit that gets only 1 combat action, and when he does get to use this ability to make a second attack, it has to target the same enemy unit. So it's the ability itself is okay. I don't think you need to be using it all that often personally, but if you really want to wound something and you're just 1 or 2 damage away, then I would probably use this ability if it's going to win you the struggle. But overall, to me, it just feels still a little bit on the weak side, just because you have to target the same unit that you already attacked. Moving on to his last ability, it is an innate ability called Karabast. While this unit has 1 or more injured tokens, its order card cannot be placed in reserve. Overall, I think it's fine. It's not the end of the world that he can't be reserved, and if anything, it's good for me because it'll stop me from wasting my force on attempting to reserve him. So, moving on to his stance card. It is called Honor Guard Captain. Starts off with 6 dice at range 5, 7 in melee, 4 defense dice at range, and 5 defense dice in melee. Not a bad base. He probably wants to be punching more than shooting, but he can do both pretty well. Looking at his ranged attack expertise, he has 2 strikes at 1 to 2, a crit and a strike at 3, and 2 crits at 4 or more. So, Not bad. He's at least getting some crits in there, and 2 strikes at 1 is fine. 2 strikes at 2 feels a little bit bad. But once you get to 3 or more, you're getting at least 1 crit, so pretty solid. Not the best we've seen, but certainly not the worst. His melee expertise is this almost identical. It's the same results, except the 2 level has been swapped to the second row instead of the first row, which I much prefer. I like that at 1 he's getting 2 strikes, and if you roll 2, you're getting at least that crit. And then 3, you're getting crit and strike, and 4, you're getting 2 crits. So overall, I think that the melee expertise is the better one, but they're both perfectly serviceable and fairly good for a supporting unit. His defensive expertise is also quite good. He's getting at least 2 blocks at every level, and then at 3 or more, he's getting 2 blocks and 2 heals. So getting 2 blocks at every level is very good. That I'm not sure that's something that we've seen on a supporting unit before, but that means that he is going to be pretty difficult to do a lot of damage to. He's not rolling the most defense dice, but if you roll 3 expertise, he's at least getting those heals. So overall, his expertise are all pretty good, and I think perfectly serviceable, especially for a supporting unit. Moving on to his combat tree. It tops out at 6 damage. He's got a shove on 2, which is important, a pin or strain on 2, another shove on, well, not another, a different shove on 3, a dash on 3, or you can go for another shove on 4 or 2 damage on the other 2, and then he ends with a reposition. So overall, fairly flexible, pretty decent damage output. The dash is nice, up to 2 shoves is very nice, and then a reposition is excellent. He's going to feel pretty mobile, just like the rest of this squad, but once again, he is a supporting character, and the fact that he cannot really do 2 attacks hurts his usability a lot, in my opinion. Hopefully, Ezra picks up some of that slack himself, but overall, I think Zeb is okay. He's definitely not bad, but he's definitely the weak link out of this squad, and likely going to be the weak link out of the whole Spectre team. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the 2-part series of shorter videos instead of one very long video. If you prefer the longer videos, please let me know. If I said anything you disagree with, I would love to hear any of your own opinions on both of these 2 characters and the squad as a whole. I'm going to now stop front-loading the channel with videos, and I'm going to move to a weekly or bi-weekly release schedule based on the news stream that we get. I'm going to try putting out some unit guides here soon within the next couple weeks, and then obviously once we get more squad previews and spoilers, I'm going to be doing videos for them every time they come out. But thank you for watching, and peace.